Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Sorry, somebody stole our class, so it just took me to kick them out. So I already sent you an email how to run Databricks cluster before the class, but even for me, it took more than 30 minutes. It's still pending. So have you watched the video? What about you guys?
Yeah, I think we're on fresh.
Let me refresh, but I refreshed just before the class, hopefully. I still can show it to you, no worries, but I cannot run on my system, but you are able to run. So that's the thing. Okay, about the previous class, based on my office hours with your friends, I think there is two major issues usually you face. One of them, when you want to run PuTTY. So let's see, where did I put? Okay, so you load. When you load, I mean, by the way, don't forget you should put Ubuntu @. Then after @ is your own address. So for everyone is different. The second issue I've seen, you should load your authentication again. So you should browse to the key page that you downloaded. So it's one of the issues that many of your friends have. The second issue that I've noticed, okay, so here you copy and paste new configurations. Then you should just press one escape and then type this code. Then just press enter. You go to the root folder and then exit your PuTTY. Don't do anything else. You should exit and connect again. So if you don't do that, it just messes up with some steps. And you need some Linux if you need. Have us taught you Linux, your program? Okay, so if you know some Linux, you might do something around it, but just do exactly the steps that I put here. So after type this one, go to the root folder and close your PuTTY, and then come back, go to the set folder, change the mode, then go to the root folder and just run your Jupyter Notebook. So Kelly, could you able to run Jupyter Notebook here? So have you reached something like this page?
I got a different page which this slide cannot be reached.
Okay, so if you just copy and paste this address,
yeah, and I also
it runs through your own system. Yeah. So the initial code here is 1, 2. Let's say. So it could be different, but usually this address just means running from your own system, but you want to run from AWS. So here, again, you should, before 888, you should paste your own IPv4 DNS address.
Yeah.
So even after that, have you reached this warning message?
I still got this site cannot be reached. So probably it's like a firewall issue or something. I'm not sure, but I tried to turn off all the firewall, like still cannot reach.
Okay, so please find me in my office hours. Yeah. Let's see what. Okay, this afternoon I have two and my office hours is before your class. But this afternoon I have two meetings, university meetings. So I'm available after 5.
After 5.
Yeah. So what else? Do you guys? There's not that much of people in the class. So do you guys could be able to run Jupyter Notebook in AWS?
So I had an error last time when I was trying to run the commands, like the command prompt was not popping up. So I tried to go back to the same instance that we created, but then I did not find the instance on AWS. So we need to create the whole thing again, like because we terminated it last time. Like, can we be able to do it again?
So if you Google about your free instance, it would say Amazon give you 750 hours. So if you want to work it next day or like maybe in 1 week, maybe it should be fine. But I think 750 hours, let's just do, okay, 750 divided by 24. Huh? Create everything from scratch. So usually they don't charge students, but I think if you just want to work during a week, maybe you don't have to every time just, oh, that's weird. My cluster even didn't work. It just terminated by itself. So what about you guys? Your cluster is wrong.
It's wrong.
That's weird. So I make another one. So yes, I still can teach you, but I cannot run on my own instance. Okay. So have you watched the new video that I posted for AWS because I couldn't finish in the class?
Yesterday,
Yes.
posted yesterday.
Yeah. So please try it again. If you couldn't next week, I mean, I look at your systems and the errors that you get. But hopefully, if you just do it 1 or 2 times, it shouldn't be too difficult. So as you see, I mean, to have experiment using Databricks, it makes your life much easier. But unfortunately, for some reason today, I cannot run my clusters. One reason could be I already use it a lot. So maybe they limit me for today. But anyway, please. Sorry, guys, I'm not sure what's happening today. Let's see. Okay, so go to week 6. What about? Oh, maybe week. Okay, let me just upload the materials on week 6. Is the right first? Okay. Okay, please download apple_stack.csv. It contains null.csv, people.json, SQL -practice.html, and SQL-practice.ipynb. So do you guys remember what does the extension of ipynb means? Yeah, it's a Python network. I give you 1 or 2 minutes to download them. Okay, so just click on sql-practice.html. So even if you don't have anything, you can run it in your browser. So look at this Databricks sign. So this basically Jupyter Notebook that I made through Databricks. Later today, we'll see the commands are very similar to SQL and Python. So basically, Pyspark incorporates SQL commands, so you can use your knowledge. In some places, you can use some SQL command or Python command. So it just incorporate both good things from SQL and Python. So you need to load your data and also the Jupyter Notebook. It's quite different how you load them. So for loading all files, go to the data. So within your Databricks, there is a data icon. Then click create table. Since we already have tables, you don't have to anything. So just go to the folder that you downloaded all files. So and drag and drop the data file. So JSON, people.json contains not.csv, applestock.csv. Drag and drop it here. Done. So your name might be different. For example, I have people-1.json, but for you there is no -1 because I have multiple. I already imported, so it's the second file. It didn't replace. It just make a numerical number after that. So these are the address of your files. So just keep in mind for later if you want to find them, the address is file store tables / and your file name. You can record it later, but in your notebook, I already put the address. So if you, for your own project, you need to take, keep track of those addresses. But it's very easy. It's just most likely for all of your files, file store / table / and your file name. You don't have to do anything else. Your files are there. So this is very easy. So how to upload your Jupyter Notebook? So we want to upload IPYNB extension, which is a Jupyter Notebook. So just go to Workplace, click on User. So again, this is my user ID, Hamid@clarku.edu. Click on it, then import. So before doing that, if I click on it, I see all of the Jupyter Notebook that I have. So you don't have, most likely for you is empty. So for bringing a new Jupyter Notebook, near your email ID, just click import. Just drag and drop your Jupyter Notebook. So select your file, drag and drop. Now it's imported. Again, my name might be different, so because I already have it in my system, so it's just parentheses 1. It just means a copy of the file that I have.
It's only Jupyter Notebook can be uploaded, or like Spider just.
Yeah, you can work with it unless they limit it, but I think it should be okay. So it might ask you to assign a cluster. So otherwise, if you don't assign a cluster, so a cluster here is equivalent to Amazon instance. So here, my cluster is loading, so I'm trying to assign But since it has not completely loaded, I cannot run the codes. But I think it's funny. I told you to make cluster before the class. I did the same, but for me, it's not running. So I'm a bad student, maybe. Okay, so let me just go back here. So again. So for me, I cannot play with the codes today until I get it, a cluster ready. I assume since I have it's a free version, I did a lot of work today. It might limit my access. So, but for you, even I can make an account right now quickly and just do that, but I want to still keep my previous account. So I wait 1 minute for your friends over Zoom so they can catch up. But as you see, it's pretty much easier than AWS and local instance. You just make an account, drag and drop your files, drag and drop your Jupyter Notebook, and just works much better. So if your team members are less than 3, so you can just do everything through Databricks. But I think it's a really good practice, especially if you run your project over AWS. Even your local instances. Okay, please mute your speaker. So especially if you get end up working a startup, they either might have a Google account for the big data processing or AWS. So either way, you already have the knowledge, so for you it would be super easy. Even the local instance is very good. For the local instance, the biggest differences here, instead of having my IPv4 address, if I want to run on my local system, the address is 127.0.01. This is equivalent of local host or local system or your own PC. The else are exactly the same. So first, importing a Spark session is basically like an object that you build your, remaining data objects or any basically methods on top of it. And as you see, is a Pyspark.sql. So the Spark session is basically from this line, you can understand is something that includes both SQL part and Spark part. In the next snippet, so I'm making just an app. Is a basically you just make an ID to keep track of your codes. It's most useful for the like maybe for Databricks with the small data doesn't make sense that much. It's optional, but it's a good practice to have it. So later, maybe you work with very large data and over some external supercomputer, you can look over your name basics. It just means you can keep track of how long your process is working and is it done or it has not finished. So there is some Linux commands that you can keep track of your codes. So the ID for your code over supercomputer is basics. So again, it could be some optional thing you can exclude. So next command is pretty much, I'm pretty sure that most of you are familiar. It's just importing OS package. So I'm just with this method, get CWD is the stand for getting current working directory. I want to see where is my files, where is my basically where did the Jupyter Network is staying. This is under Databricks folder under driver. Let me just refresh my. So You can play with this command. You can add new commands because I have some limitation today. So I try to get back to local instance because everything is under our control. So even if you use AWS free instance, if you use too much, maybe they limit you. But if it's local system, you don't have any limitation. Everything is under your control. So the next one, I'm from Spark. I mean, the app that I said, I'm just reading a JSON file. And this is the address of my JSON. So I think I already changed. So the address that I put here, is it exactly the same as the address that when I drag and drop my data set? Is it the same address? Even in future in your project, the address, everything is same except for you should change your file name.
So if we forgot the address, where can we check the address? If I forgot, read.
So people.json is from your local system. You don't forget. You check your own computer. But this is the default address. So it doesn't put in anywhere else. So maybe if you forget, and there's some limitation, maybe next you pick a small data set, again, drag and drop it here, you can find. And there is some documentations. So you can read documentation and read about file system. Where did they put it? And maybe also it gives you some, more details. For example, how to delete, how to copy, and how to access to external data. For deleting, I mean, the last block of code here is for deleting. So this is a delete command. I put the address. So instead of I have multiple copy, I can just put people.json and then just delete. So your last block, I didn't put it first because I don't want you by mistake running time. So you won't be able to run the remaining code. So show method is a easy Python method. You can just see your data. So as you see, I have two columns, age and name, and I have some empties. Like for example, for age, I don't have one of the age. So again, data, it just refers to JSON file that I imported. With printed schema, I can see the structure of or the format of each column. So age is a line variable. It's exactly the same as Python. And just a nullable means I let to import the null cells. And the second is name, which is a string. So here I didn't define the structure or schema, but Pyspark has some internal algorithm. It guesses, and the guess is good. So I'm happy with that. I've just skimmed through some basic commands, so it just helps you to review some Python if you need to a refresher. So with data.columns, I just get my columns in a list with describe. Is similar to printing your schema. It just says what is your folders, what is your data, and what are the columns, and what each refers to. So with describe with the dot show after describe, and you can find some basic statistics. For example, for age, I have mean, minimum, standard deviation, maximum, and for string, which is name, maybe it doesn't make sense that much. Because it doesn't make sense to standard deviation or mean. I give you 1 minute to play with the codes. Maybe you remember some of your Python codes before, so you can maybe change a little bit.
Learning the code is taking very long.
Yeah, it's out of our control. Sorry, it's just we are using a free instance of Databricks. So as you see, for me, even usually, based on my experiences, so usually AWS, you don't see such a thing. I mean, the only thing you need to be afraid of if they charge you or not, but I think the easiest way using Databricks. More technical ways using AWS and local instance, but you need, I mean, have some technical knowledge. But no worries, it's your first time working with this such a technology, and I already know it's difficult. So you just learn how to use like supercomputer and how to run your Hadoop or Spark code over a supercomputer. So yeah, I mean, if you have a small data set, there is no point of using like AWS or Databricks. You can run your own, even you don't need to learn Pyspark, but we just learned, let's say later you get hired in Amazon and they have, or maybe Walmart or any large company that have a lot of data set. So the concept is easy. Maybe you might do some descriptive statistics, some visualizations, or some machine learning, but your platform is very different. So it looks silly and easy, but I mean, when you have a really huge data set, I mean, you cannot run on your own system. So finally, my cluster is running. So I just go from first line. So you see the green dot here. So let me just run, see how long does it take for me. Attach and run.
For the purpose using AWS and Hadoop are similar.
So Hadoop or
and AWS, like.
So AWS is just an instance. It's like having a supercomputer somewhere out of your institution or out of your home. But what can you do with that infrastructure? You can run so you can use the Hadoop technology, and one of the ecosystem of Hadoop is Pyspark, and you can run Pyspark to be able to do some analysis over very large data sets. So just to make it oversimplified, let's say Amazon AWS EC2 instance is, let's say, is a hardware. On top of hardware, you have an operating system, it's Ubuntu. So in your system, your hardware is your laptop and your operating system is Windows. So on top of Ubuntu in AWS, we have Hadoop ecosystem. And within that technology, we just want to use Spark. Yeah, even I have cluster running. I mean, it just takes forever to run the code. So again, sorry, these are out of my control. This is like a private company. So yeah, even I cannot run. So, but frankly speaking, yesterday it was just went super fast.
I think like 30 people using the same time support that. Yeah. If a computer, I mean, maybe it's like a small movement, but like it can't be Databricks. If your Databricks infrastructure is like weak enough to like get like shut down like 20 people and on the same IP or something.
Yeah, so refer to the previous class is a shared cloud services. So, I mean, let's say you hire in a company that have their own contract with Databricks, you don't see such a thing. So it just gives you your own cloud infrastructure. So hopefully you don't face such a thing. Okay, so next few blocks, I'm just playing with the data type or schema. So previously I've seen that Pyspark had a good guess in terms of column type. but maybe sometimes it couldn't guess well. So I need to define what type of column I have. So from Pyspark SQL types, I'm importing a struct field, string type, integer type, struct type. So let's see how they work. So I define a list as a schema. So as you see, I'm saying that I have a field of age, which is integer, and true here means you can't bring null. And I have another column with the label name is name, is a string, and it can bring a null type, null dat.
Can you say that again about the true?
True means you can import empty cells. So you can add a comment. So let's say you can just enter, here you can type true means we can bring null cells. Also, check Apache Spark frequently. So some versions, they update their some commands. So in each new version might be a little different. Apache Spark documentation. So let's say for your own project, you need to use different commands. And I think this is a good one. On top of that, there's a go to API docs, pick Python, and it gives you some good tutorials. If you can go next, talk about learn about MLlib. So most of your work would be on MLlib. This is a machine learning library for Pyspark. So you can follow documentation. Even here, they teach you how to install. And actually, it's a good practice always to check the documentation. So let me see. Apache MLlib documentation. So yeah, and I mean, just pick the first one. Let's say in your project, you need to do some regression. So click in this section and talk about different classification regression algorithms that is available in Spark 2.12. So anyway, okay, so I define a list that contains some information about the data type I'm going to bring. And with the struct type function, I just create such a schema. Now, when I want to import people.json, I say, okay, don't guess. The schema is what I just created. So it create this, it just assign this schema, which just means the data type that I have. And so df is my new data frame. And with print schema, I can find the data types that I have. And as you see, when it's print, it's just a nullable equal true, because I already said we can import the null cells. And with df.show, we can see your table or data frame. I give you 1 minute to play with the codes. Hopefully your cluster is running. So is there anyone over Zoom or in the class who could start this, working on this assignment? Not yet? Okay. I think probably first, yeah, if you can do this, the second one, test should be super easy. Just you find the mean of a column, so it shouldn't be difficult. But although it might bring some challenges for you, but it's really good practice. And like, remember Shashank is working at startup that they have a lot of cloud computing. So this is actually a good practice to just make you ready for such experiments. So let me just skim through some Python code. So like, for example, with df. So with df.a, with df bracket h, you cannot see. It's just good for calculations. With the type, you can see is a Pyspark, SQL, and we have a column. So this is like a SQL command. So df.select.age, sorry, df.select parentheses age, you pick that column, but again, this is good for calculation. For example, you can multiply to something, subtract. So, however, with show, you can see your column. So, you can also select multiple columns. So, after select method, you in the parentheses, you put the column names, and with dot show, you can just see them. So, with column, you can make a new column. So just a df with column method. My new column is h2, which is equal df bracket h. So I told you df bracket h is not for showing, it's for calculations. So multiply this column to 2 and assign it to a new column of h2. And with dot show, you can see it. So in some, and as you see, it doesn't change the actual df. If you want to assign or just keep record of it, maybe you can just assign to df2, so you can record your changes. But if you don't assign to anything, it's just for showing, and then later it just won't be saved. With column renamed, you can rename your column. So from h1 to h to h1, and with dot show method, you can see it. Again, you don't have to memorize this command. So, but if you practice a lot, it just sticks in your mind, and just whenever there is a position requires some Pyspark knowledge, I think I already sent you an email in what was the name of website? So I send you a website that show you what they may ask you in the interviews. Indeed, yeah. And I think Eureka is another website. So there is some certain tasks that are necessary. So even in the interview, they might ask you, but I don't think in the interview, they ask you to make a whole project. They may ask you to do this and that, so to see you are able to do something. So in my course, I don't expect you to memorize these commands, because you can go to Apache Spark documentation, and you can search for the commands that you need for your own project. I mean, I review some of the commands that you need the most, but still just take care of your interviews and with tasks they might ask you. Also, if you practice a lot, hopefully it just sticks in your mind. Okay, any questions? I wait 1 minute for your friends over Zoom. So this is an in-person class. I mean, it just means if you have a visa issue or you are sick, you can use Zoom session. It's optional to attend the class, but if you're in the class, if you ask a question, I can help you. Especially we have so much of technical content that you may stuck in it. If you're in the class, I can check with you and resolve your problem. It's over Zoom. I mean, just keep in mind your education quality might be lower. You don't have to come in my class, but just keep in mind there's what could happen at the end of the semester. Okay, so as I said, Spark session incorporates both Spark and SQL capabilities. So one of the things that you might remember in SQL, you make a mask on top of your data. So, or SQL view. So for create replace temp view, I just make a temporary SQL view and mask it over my data. So the name is guys. Now I'm just skim through some SQL commands. For example, with this, you can call SQL method. And within parentheses, you can run some SQL command. For example, here I said select star means everything from guys. Guys is just a mask over your data. And with result one.show, you can see your table. Have you worked with them like mask data or make a temporary view in your SQL class? No? Oh, it's not a big deal. Basically, it's just a snapshot of your data. So it's the way you can look at your certain data. So, but what about these commands? For example, select start from guys where age more than 25. Does it make sense for you? Where age column is more than 25. Okay. So again, these are SQL commands. I don't ask you to, certain SQL commands, as long as you can run your project should be fine, but SQL is a good skill that might be beneficial in the job market. So maybe you can take some free certification through LinkedIn and just attach into your LinkedIn profile. So as you see, just one of my observations is more than 25. So this age, if you go back, so I have 19 and one of them is null, but just one of them is more than 25. The reason I have it here. So next one, I want to import a CSV file for Apple stock. And as you see, it's pretty similar to Python code. So spark.read.csv. I put the address, which is should be common for you guys. And I'm saying infer schema. I just let Spark to guess the column type. And I'm saying that my data includes a header. So it shouldn't include the first row because the first row is my header information. And here I'm printing the schema. It seems to be a right column type. So I have data string, open, high, low, close. All of them are double. And I didn't say about the null data. So by default, just let null information to be imported. For me, it sounds correct. But again, when you print your schema in your project, if some of the column type doesn't make sense, you should make a new schema and assign it to the data that you import. Okay, with .show, I can see a snapshot of my data. I'm just showing me the first 20 rows. Similar to previous one, I'm just run a filter method. So I'm just saying filter out anything that is open value is more than 300. And with .show method, I can see my data. So this is, was one of my friend's projects. So he got the stock market data and tried to predict the next day Apple stock value. So there is some value like open price, high price, low price, close price, total stock volume, and adjusted close price. Also, you can select multiple columns. So you can, if you want to select multiple columns after open After your filter, just assign a select method and identify your column names and dot show, just show. Just keep in mind, again, in your project, I don't expect you to memorize these methods or functions. Yes, and there is no final exam, so you guys can just search for SQL commands, Pyspark commands. But again, don't think that is enough. If you want to get a job, most likely you should know at least know some basic tasks. Yeah, you might need some. I mean, I don't have time to cover all of the SQL commands, and also I assume you already had a Python course. I don't expect you know everything at this point. You might have it like in the first semester, but still, I'm pretty sure you can just search for some specific Python function and find. If it's more related to a Spark, I teach them, but otherwise, you need to search for it. I remember I had two internship interview. One was Google and another one with Walmart. I mean, there is some general skills to how to be nice, have know what you want, be a like happy face. But I think at the early interview stages, for them, technical thing is the most important. So, for example, in Apple, they asked me about, okay, make a for loop for doing Fibonacci series. Yeah, they told me, I think the first question is just say, okay, write a for loop, and in the for loop, we want to see a Fibonacci, you make a Fibonacci series. In Walmart, I don't exactly remember, but I think they show me a data set that has some empty cells, and they told me how to have some, what would you do? Do you impute, you drop, something like that. So for both of those great companies, I applied for a very entry-level internship, and they asked me, I mean, after saying, hello, how are you? They started asking technical questions. So let's say you would have an interview with Google and you don't know how to do a for loop. That's bad. Some companies, they don't expect you memorize the code exactly, but maybe you can write on a piece of a paper and it's fine, but at least they want to know, you know, the structure of a for loop or while loop, those kind of things. I think, so the next filter is more look like a Python command. So previous one, you know, you don't specify your data frame, you know, here you said stock bracket open. So as you see, the first one has more SQL like flavor. The second one has more Python flavor, and both of them just return same exactly data. So again, in your project, you don't have to run both blocks because the result is exactly the same. It's just showing you can use some SQL techniques or at the same time more Python-like commands and get exactly the same result. So this block, next block, the result is exactly the same. We just have two flavors of commands. Also, you can use these conditions. For example, this one is AND condition, this is OR, and tilde is for not. For example, here I'm saying I want a stock more than 200 and less than 300, or a stock price more than 400. From the table, just show me the two columns of open and high. Open and high, and the open is either between 200, 300, or more than 400. In the second filter command, I'm just saying that show me a stock more than 200 and not more than 250. So looking at this command here, do you think, does it show 220 for me? So tilde means not. So a stock more than 200, less than, not more than 250. So could it show 220? What about 290? No, because this condition means not more than 250. So again, still these are more like Python commands. Huh? Yeah, that tilde means not. And I put the, let me just give you some time. Maybe you need to comment some blocks. I did some comments to help you, but let me just wait a few minutes so you guys can put, I think even if you don't run the cluster, you still can put comments if you want. So let's wait at least 1 or 2 minutes so all of your friends could put the comments in the previous blocks. Well, you put some comments, let me find. Yeah, it's still a comment. Oh my God, that's bad. Yeah, it's a shared public service, so my different people are using, so it doesn't let me to run. Maybe I shouldn't tell you 30 minutes. I should run it first and let you do. Oh, that's okay. Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen such an issue in AWS. AWS is a shared services, but I never saw such a thing. But again, if you do on your local system, most likely you don't see anything because everything is under your control. For running your codes over AWS or local system, you still need to search a little bit. I haven't covered everything because it's just for the people who are more than 3. Please do your own search. So it's not too difficult. If you already set up AWS or set up on your local system, shouldn't be too difficult. But run it over on your, just run under Hadoop ecosystem. You might find some softwares or some packages that let you do simulations, but I want you guys to know some infrastructure knowledge because the name of the course is Big Data Infrastructure and Programming. So you need to know some infrastructure knowledge. Okay, hopefully by now you put your comments, but it's still every few block I wait a little bit so you could be able to either ask your questions or put your comments. Yeah, I mean, the next one, I just want to find a stack which is exactly equal 211.75. And with the collect method, it just records as a list. So I have a list here. Previously, with the show, it just show you the record, but with the collect, it just assign it to my result as a list. And with as dict, you can convert to a dictionary. So I have a dictionary, and so have you ever worked with the JSON? Have you opened a JSON file? So in the JSON, have you seen? So how is, when you open a JSON file, how does it look like?
I tried to open it in R. So it's like nested. A lot of nested files and a lot of files combined together.
Yeah, does it look like a dictionary?
I was unable to view it in R. I asked someone some data engineer to open it and give it to me.
Yeah, it might be a complex dictionary, but usually JSON is either nested. I mean, it could be very nice shape, but it just JSON is a dictionary. It's a dictionary file. So if your JSON is not too super crowded, you can see such a structure. So it's like a dictionary inside a text file. So with ASDIC, I convert to a dictionary and I can call the key. So again, these are some random Python commands that I think might be needed for future. So for example, how to call a certain value from a dictionary. So you need to put a bracket and put the key that you're looking for. Okay, let's watch a video. Hopefully by then my cluster would work. So in this next experiment, we try to deal with the empty cells. So one easy way of getting rid of empty cells, you drop some rows and columns. So for example, here, with this CSV file contains null.csv, you see that for some names, I have how much they could say. For some of them, I don't have the name. For some, I don't have say. For some, I don't have both. So do you guys remember from my business intelligence class, what happens if you drop every null value? Okay, you lose some data points.
And depending on the actual distribution. But well, if there's too many null values, then you're just like not getting your data isn't representative of the actual like population you're trying to look at.
Yeah, I don't want to be sexist, but I have actually an interesting experiment. I was working with a female student and I mentioned about age and she was very mad at me. She didn't like, I didn't mean anything, but just randomly happened. So let's say, so for some people, maybe if you ask me, for me, weight is something that I don't want to talk about my weight. So for some people, maybe ethnicity. For some people, their income. So people have some concern about some certain information. So, and that is okay. But let's say you work in the credit card company. Actually, I mean, financial companies are the one that hire a lot of people from business analytics and data science. You drop, let's say you drop all the nulls. And I assume some information is sensitive, let's say for females and some for males. And let's say you have so many information or so many questions that are more sensitive for female. So if you drop all the records that has a null, maybe you lose so much of information about the female applicants. So when you train a model, your train won't be trained well for the female observations. Maybe for male applicants, some other informations are sensitive. So if you have too many questions about the sensitive information for male, if you drop those observations, you lose so much of male information. So when you train an algorithm, it won't be trained well over male observation. So let's look at some similar story, and I guess now it should make more sense for you. Let me copy this. Okay, there's add. Let's escape.
Of gender discrimination. One of Apple's co-founders is accusing the company's new digital credit card of gender discrimination. Apple introduced the card in August, partnering with Goldman Sachs as the issuing bank. Applicants go through a credit approval process. Last week, one tech entrepreneur said the algorithms being used are sexist.
Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak tweeted that he got 10 times the credit limit his wife received, even though they have no separate accounts or separate assets. Apple deferred to Goldman Sachs, which tells CBS News, quote, "Our credit decisions are based on a customer's credit worthiness and not on factors like gender, race, age, sexual orientation, or any other basis prohibited by law." CBS News contributor and Wired's editor-in-chief, Nick Thompson, is here. Nick, good morning.
Good morning.
So cast your mind back to the old days. You apply for a credit card and somebody sits behind a desk and looks over your application. Now a computer's doing it.
Sure.
Is this computer system at Apple flawed?
It could be flawed. It could be biased. One of the big problems of our time right now is that biases are very hard to pick out because they're built into really complex algorithmic systems. In this particular case, though, there is another explanation, right? Steve Wozniak is one of the founders of Apple.
Yes.
He makes a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so if you make a ton of money and your wife doesn't, and you apply for separate cards, you might get different credit limits because your credit limit is based on your credit score.
Yeah, but he was saying
income.
they weren't segregated. They're
Apple cards, you apply for different accounts.
Okay.
So he's applying for a different account. There is an easy explanation. That doesn't mean the system isn't biased. It doesn't mean it isn't rigged against women. It's just the data we have right now is not the most compelling example.
Can you make algorithms more transparent? Is that possible?
It is very, very hard because part of the nature of artificial intelligence is that the computer is making decisions that the human doesn't make. So for a lot of AI algorithms, you just say, optimize for X, optimize for Y. So for example, in credit approvals, you might say, look at all the data and optimize for a system that minimizes defaults. And then you don't know what goes into that.
You're saying some of these companies don't even know how their own algorithms work.
They know what the algorithms are trying to do. They don't know exactly how
they
the
get there?
algorithm is getting there.
Yeah.
So you can try to audit it. You can try to break it apart. You can look at different factors, take different inputs. But it is a complicated process. It is one of the most interesting questions of our time.
Really?
How do we get justice in a system where we don't know how the algorithms are working?
Go ahead.
Well, you could argue for an algorithm because it's not that old white bank manager making his decision, one guy behind a counter. It's now a machine, and that doesn't have the biases we do. But if the biases are built in because a programmer put them there, like you're stuck.
Or the data put them there. But one of the reasons why when this story broke, I was a little skeptical.
So this guy tried to find why it happened, but even he doesn't know exactly what happened. But I'm telling you, one could be, he just mentioned about the data quality. So I said, if let's say you have, even could be in the other way, maybe you have some sensitive information based on some ethnicity or gender. So if you just drop those observations, you won't have a good model for those category of your data. So like here, look, so I brought a data with the name of data null. Then I said NA drop. So you might remember it's a Python code that you drop null observation. So you lost almost all the data. Just one record is remained. You can put a threshold. For example, if 2 or more is null, so just one record here, I have 2 null cells. So now it dropped. Or you can put this option, how equal all, means if all of the records is null, just drop it. Later, in some more, your Jupyter Network explains some more ways to go around it, not losing your observation. A quick question. Let's say I have a database. I said dropping records may not be a good practice. Do you think in which case I could be able to drop my rows without causing a problem? Or maybe it's a good practice. If I have a null in dependent variable or independent variables, which one you drop your observation? Let's say you want to make a predictive model. So that predictive model has 2 sets of data. One independent columns or independent variables, and one dependent column or dependent variable. So if you have null in the dependent variable, you drop the row, or for the independent variables.
So I think well, I was
variable that you can't predict, but you can't use it to figure out anything.
Okay, I think one of you over Zoom wanted to say something.
Professor, I think when we drop the null variables in in the dependent variables, actually the predicting them would be easier rather than the times when we want to drop them when from the independent variables. You hear my voice?
Actually, we have a good discussion here. So when you want to predict or train a predictive model, so you try to use your independent variable to predict a dependent variable. When your dependent variable is not, there's nothing there. How you can train it? You train what? Yeah, so
Exactly, I agree with you.
Yeah, if it's independent variable, it depends, but it's better to impute it. So they use imputation because we don't want to. It's better not to lose your observations, unless like let's say 90% of your column, or let's say 90% of your row is empty. Maybe you can drop them, but usually we try to avoid. One of the reasons you just saw a credit card example, so. If you do some observation, it could be a reason for being having bias in your model. Whenever you see empty cells in your dependent variable, you must drop it. In independent, it's better not to drop unless you have to.
I even had a scenario where I was working on a data set for a computation. So they gave us a data set which consisted of 40% null values in predictor weight, the target weight. So when we asked about it, they just left it to us to decide whether to drop it or keep it.
That's because they have the challenge, I assume, is can you, or the people who, if you leave it in, those people aren't the people who are winning, and they're trying to see if you're able to make that conclusion for yourself.
And just mention about that. So I think actually, I mean, when I look at your accounts, I couldn't see those questions and the data. But if I was in your shoes, probably I mentioned that, and I mentioned how I deal with that. So I think for your descriptive statistics, you can talk about two cases. So maybe you don't have, first you don't drop anything. You make some descriptive statistics, some visualization over whole data. But you can say for predictive model, you cannot use null for dependent variable. So you exclude them, and this is the description of the remaining data. So maybe you run two sets of descriptive and visualizations. If you don't need it, maybe if there is a limitation in terms of presentation time or number of slides, just explain what happened, and maybe you don't have to show descriptive statistics before dropping. But if there is no limitation in terms of pages or time, just mention both. Yeah, they want to see how you deal with the empty data. Okay, here I'm imputing non-numeric data. So with any field, I'm just saying that whenever you see a non-numeric data, impute with unknown. So it just put the character. So later you can make some dummy variables. So one of the ways you can deal with the categorical data. So you cannot import categorical data into algorithms. What can you do? You make dummy variables. So one category could be category of unknown. And just if you need for your competition, we have two types of imputation for categorical data. There's different names. One of them is hot one encoding. Another one, again, different names, but usually this is soft encoding. So one hot, not hot one. So one hot encoding means for each category, you make a dummy variable. in soft encoding just means assign a number to each category. For example, I can assign 1 to John, 2 to unknown, and 3 to Cindy. Usually soft encoding is not that much great. People usually don't appreciate it. Usually appreciate one-hot encoding. Also, I assign another method of NA field. This time I'm saying if it's a numeric, impute with 0. So in the under sale, I have some null, I impute with 0, which is not a good practice. Usually when you have, I mean, you just search for how imputation, I teach you later, but for categorical value, maybe you can search for either you can impute with unknown or impute with mode. Mode being the most frequent observation. For numerical ones, a good practice is impute with the median or mean. Don't put 0. These are just very basic examples. Again here, I mean, this is an easy example, but you can also subset your columns. So maybe for one column, you impute with mode, another one you just assign label of unknown. So with subset, you can work on the column, you can identify the columns that you want to have certain imputation. So let's say, I mean, later we work with a much practical data set, but if I have another column, maybe last name, and I want to impute with mode. So I make another subset with for the last name, and imputation is mode. Look at here. Here, I'm importing mean function, and just saying that, okay, data set return the mean. So for the sale column, calculate the mean, and just show it to me. So I assign it to IMP mean. This is the arbitrary name. So the mean of whole column is 400.5. You can calculate median too. But look, this time, I didn't use subset of sale. I just put the column name. I'm just saying that, okay, on your data set, impute, and the imputation value is just mean of whole column. So imp mean is basically a list, and within the list, I get the first zero, the index of 0, the first one. So over the data null, NA field means I want to impute. The value this time is not 0. I already calculate the mean of the column, and I impute with the mean. And I'm just, the subset, the column that I want to work with, it just saves. I'm showing here. This is a good imputation. So the earliest one, I impute with 0, is not a good one. Shouldn't do that. This time, first I calculate the column mean, then impute with the mean of my column. I wait like a few minutes for you guys, so if you want to put some comments on the blogs. Also keep in mind, in your presentation, put your thought process. So it's very important if someone take care of null in the dependent variable. So just mention that. Maybe they are tired and they don't check your results, but it's very good if you mention. For later, if you want to impute with mode, you need to import the mode function and select your name column. And when you do if null, which is for imputation, impute the mode of column. So instead of imp means 00, probably your arbitrary name, I mean, a list with the index of 0. Instead of 2 nulls here, you have the mode of that column. Okay, next look at the date and close variable together. So our date looks good, but let's say you want to use it for your machine learning algorithms. You cannot import date directly into an algorithm. You need to convert to equivalent. Maybe you can find this month, it's year, and month and year. Let's say you could do one-hot encoding and consider as a dummy variable. So for converting these strings, you need to import some function from a Pyspark SQL function. I imported day of month, hour, day of year. Oh, we should finish soon. So let me skim through fast. For example, with day of month, you can find the day of month, and it could be a variable month. You could make a new column for month, and now you can use it as a variable because you have a numerical value. So again, the goal of bringing this function, converting these strings to numerical, some numerics that you can use for your model. Like here, so I'm using the year call. Basically here, I'm just adding a year. And here you can see I'm using the year column. So I make a year column, which its value is a year function up to the date column. So with the year function here, I find its year, assign a new variable of year at the end. So you have the year, which is the numerical value. You can use it for your calculations. Here I'm grouping by its year because I already make its year. When you group, you should assign a function how you want to group it. So I want to group over the year column, but also I want to find the mean of other values. So as you see, so I just have from 2010 to 15, but for the other columns, I have AVG attached to the name. Just means since my group function is mean, it just calculates the average of those columns. Also, you can limit your variable. So again, you might remember I had the select method. With the select method, I'm just saying I don't want to work with the whole of table. I just want to select a subset of my columns. I grouping by the year variable that I created before. And my group by function is mean. So I just have 2 columns of year and close. With the year, I just group my observations, and I find the mean of close column because I don't have any other column. Let me just go. Oh, we already ran out of time. I think the remaining is okay. It just also add a bit column rename method, so you can rename your columns. With format number, you can round up your number. So I'm saying that select the year column and also round up by 2 digits. Oh. So here, I work with this previous table. So previous table just had year and average annual close price, which are just renamed my previous column. In some cases, you can consider alias name. So if you are not happy with the column name, you can either rename it or assign an alias column name. So let me just come here. So as you see, let's just focus on this line. I'm just saying that from average close, select the year and round up with 2 digits and assign a new name, which is average annual close price. So you have 2 ways if you are not happy with the name. Either when you want to do some calculation here, just rounding up, you assign a name with the alias method. It's one way. The basic way, with the with column rename, you can rename your column. So basically, this block and this block are equivalent. It's just 2 ways of renaming your column. So as I said, sometimes you run some calculation on your column. For example, I group by and end up finding my function was mean. It just assign AVG before the names. You can assign alias name, so you don't have to rename later. I think we ran out of time. Just the last block, you just with db utils fsrm, you can delete your file that you uploaded. So you can just get rid of it. After using your clusters, it seems if you use a lot, it limits your access. You can select on, click on compute, come to your cluster compute page, and just find the cluster you're using. Under actions, this is a terminate button. Just click on it and confirm, and it should be terminated. So, but no worries, your Jupyter Notebook and data is there. So later, if you want to work with it, just log in, run a cluster, find your Jupyter Notebook. Let me just show it again. So you go to workspace, find your ID, either import or under your ID name. This is my SQL practice Jupyter Notebook. But since I don't have any cluster running, I cannot use it.
Okay, we need to delete the file right now.
You don't have to. I just put. I just let you know how to delete it if you want. You don't have to. And if you want to, you can search also how to copy, how to delete. These are. You can search for Databricks. For example, on Google, you can search how to delete a file in Databricks. How I delete files from the DBFS Databricks. And if you go to this forum, they explain how to do that. Here, okay, they put the exactly same address. So dbutil. So again, this is a very complicated course. I mean, I review some SQL commands, some Python command, but I assume either you remember or you could search for that. Also, for Databricks, AWS, or local instance, still there's like a deep sea. I'm not sure how deep I could go, but based on your need, please do your own search. You are getting a master's degree. When you're undergrad, people teach you everything. When you go to master, they teach a little bit. No, they teach some and they ask you to learn some. If you want to go for PhD, you should, you should create a new knowledge. You should do your own search. Usually your advisor don't teach you that much. They show you the path. So during your master, you learn how to do some of your learning by yourself, but still people teach you a lot and they instruct you also, they show you the path. Okay, that's for today. Thank you very much and see you next week.